It's 7:04, and I call this meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Huffman Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. We'll start with our pledge and our prayer. Please bow. Dear Lord, thank you for allowing us to come here today. And please be with us as we make decisions. Please look after all the families in our communities, the students that are home for the summer, those that are traveling, those that are coming here to see loved ones. Please watch over all of them. Please be with our military and our first responders. Please look after them as they go about their business. And please be with us tonight and guide us in our decisions. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Okay, so we have no public comments tonight. So we will move on to consent agenda. So I need a motion.
I make a motion to approve consent agenda.
I have a motion from Ms. Prasick. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second from Ms. Sullivan. Any questions or comments? All in favor? All are in favor. Next, we'll move on to reports of the board. We had some finance subcommittee meetings. I guess we're every other week right now. I think right now. So a lot of that has been going on with the budget and everything going on. And we also had our budget workshop and balanced scorecard workshop on June 5th. I really appreciate everybody making the time to be there. That was a great workshop. And then also we've had a couple superintendent contract advisory subcommittee meetings, and we will talk about that a little bit later in the any comments on anything else going on? Summertime.
So we just got out of graduation season, celebration season. It was truly an honor, a privilege to get to be a part of all of those celebrations and see all of the incredible things happening in our district. So, exciting time.
It was fun. I gave out a lot of diplomas. All right, so let's move on to our interim superintendent reports.
All right, well, good evening. I'd like to echo the exciting time. I'd like to begin my interimship by providing some notes from the field, stories from things that we've experienced this last month. And so I want to begin by sharing just how proud I am of the work that's being accomplished across our district, especially with our bond projects. Tonight, Dr. Skinner is going to share some updates with our middle school expansion, and it's off to a fantastic start thanks to his leadership, so super excited about that. I also want to echo the sentiment about the hard work that went into the budget. June 12th threw a wrench in what we left that budget workshop excited, confident in the direction we were going to go, and then we received the to the administrator address. And Ms. Raymer has handled that so wonderfully along with her team. And I want to echo my thanks to Ms. Raymer and Ms. Bailey, because they've been working tirelessly with the priority to make sure that whatever decision is made is going to be the most impactful for all of our staff. So yes, this teacher retention allotment did give us an avenue to compensate our teachers, but that is not everyone who impacts our kids every single day. So lots of difficult conversations, a lot of trying to figure out how we can make this the most impactful compensation plan. And so I'm hopeful and excited that the staff will be excited and grateful. A lot of consideration, a lot of things that are baked into this to really hopefully elevate all of our staff. As we prepare for the new year, I was reflecting on our next board meeting won't happen until the end of July, and I was like, I didn't have an opportunity to share with the board or with the community about our theme moving into the next year. At the beginning of July is where our work really begins, when our district leadership team comes and we ground ourselves and set the tone for the year. Then that goes into setting the tone to the year to our expanded leadership team, and then that ripples out to our teachers who come back in August. And so I'm excited to share as we reflect on data, on the work, and just everything that's taken place over the last couple of years. Our theme this upcoming year is passion, purpose, and possibilities, the magic of learning. And it really does highlight the fact that we have a lot of passionate people in our district, but if we're all grounded and understand the purpose of why we're here, it only opens up the possibilities for our students and for our staff. And so really excited. We're putting a little bit of a twist on it for the magic of learning. Super excited for some of the work that's ahead, and I can't wait to see what we're gonna create together. Lastly, I just want to share, we closed out summer school. Summer school went really well, very smoothly. And something we did a little different this year. Later tonight, I'll share some preliminary achievement data. In responding to our data, when we looked at the high school data, we have a unique opportunity in high schools to try and capture more kids at the summer retake. And so we completely, Miss Dorsey probably, we took her whole summer school plan and like flipped it upside down in a matter of 2 hours. But we were able to create 2 summer schools at the high school. Summer school credit recovery, seat time, but also did like an EOC boot camp. And we've never had this much participation, and we've never had as much participation of the kids to actually show up to do the retakes. So any of those results are only gonna help our accountability as we receive those reports later on this summer. But kudos to that team, kudos to Ms. McDonald, and just everyone, just the teachers that weren't signed up to do summer school, signed up to do summer school when they found out about the boot camp. So it was just really a true effort, and that's really what we're here for, is to produce opportunities and possibilities for our kids. So just wanted to share a little bit of little tidbits from what we've been working on the last month or so. And I believe I have the next item.
You do.
And I will need to connect to my computer for that. All right, so 6th cycle attendance report. We ended up, Ms. Raymer had actually just shared that information. We ended up at 93.9%, and so just shy of our goal. Later on tonight, I'm going to be presenting all the data from our balanced scorecard cycle 1, but we did end up the year at 93.9. It is an increase from last year, but not quite where we had set our goal mark for this year. All right, we're gonna jump into the preliminary achievement data. Okay, so I wanna highlight that this data is preliminary. There's still some changes that can happen. However, what we have right now is sufficient enough to go ahead and present. You've heard me say we need to be achieving and growing, but we can't be doing neither. So the data I'm going to share tonight is just achievement data. We do not have final growth data yet, but that will come at the July board meeting. And at the July board meeting, I'll also be able to share preliminarily our accountability rating and where we fall. I'm going to preface this data with saying we did experience a dip in achievement this year. You're going to see it across the board in math. You're going to see it pretty much. These are not the outcomes we had set forth for ourselves, and this is the raw and uncut data of what we have. So what you'll see by grade level, it is broken up, and you have this in your packet, but 3rd grade reading, our approaches grade level was at 66, and you're gonna see underneath it what the state average is. So not only did we dip from our previous year, but there are some instances where we underperformed the state average. We did see some increases in our Spanish population, Spanish testing. That's a small group, and that's something we're really trying to fine tune and figure out what's the best approach for those students. Sometimes transitioning them over to English testing sometimes is better, but it's really case by case depending on the student. But we did see some gains in our overall Spanish scores for elementary. I do want to share our math is particularly concerning. You'll see that we are in the 50s, 60s. We're really not jumping above 70% in our approaches at math. And that's been a subject of conversation for us to figure out why. When you see across the board maths, when you see some dips happening across the board, that's systemic, and so that's something that requires a lot of thought and reflection and really digging into what are our current practices. And so it also brings about the change that we're about to implement with our math curriculum couldn't be at a better time. And so as we look back at the curriculum program we utilized up until this point, and then looking at the new curriculum that we are adopting, is to also piecemeal and figure out where did we fall short and what do we need to proactively address as we look through the new materials. There are a couple of celebrations. Our science scores in 5th grade did go up, and that was with a new curriculum this year. So typically you'll see stagnant growth, or you'll see a little bit of a dip when you adopt new curriculum. So we were very excited to see at the elementary level our science scores go up. Let me scroll down so you can see some of our middle school data. Now at middle school, if you remember, their goal this year was to focus on 7th grade math, because historically, when our 6th graders go into 7th grade, and the 7th graders who take advanced math, they do not take the math star for 7th grade, they take the 8th grade test. And so that has been historically an incredibly low data point for us. I am happy to say that they experienced a lot of gains in 7th grade math, and that is the work to attribute the leadership of Dr. Ruiz and how intentional she was on setting a goal to address that area. Now our goal is, how do we take that momentum and those efforts that were strategic, how do we spread that across to make sure that we're producing those outcomes for all of our students. And lastly, the bane of my existence is 8th grade social studies. This has been an ongoing struggle for us, not only us, because when you look at it compared to other districts, we actually did better than some of them, surprisingly, but we have purchased a new resource moving into next year for 8th grade social studies, and we're just going to really have to dig really hard into 8th grade social studies and understand that what we cover in 8th grade is not enough. So we are going to be revisiting our curriculum and our content for 6th and 7th, to build in some buffers of some of that content, because it's so much that they have to cover in 8th grade, and it doesn't give teachers an opportunity to reteach and reassess. So Ms. Garcia and I have been working on how we can build that into 6th and 7th grade. But it is not where we want to be. Before I show you EOC scores, I'm sure you have questions, ask them away.
I think we've all looked at this all week.
Yeah, I will say this. I ran the numbers because I'm a little bit of a number person and I like to plug things into formulas. We are not anticipating an accountability rating that is unfavorable to where we were last year. It's just, we had very high hopes for this year. So just knowing that achievement is something we've really been trying to close our gaps on, working on the instruction that's happening on the first teach. I would be safe to say we were all expecting a little more, and so we've already had some data dig conversations and looking at what are some things systemically we can work on next year to make sure. On my end, last month I shared some grants that we had secured, the Texas Instructional Leadership Grant and LASSO grant. I have already met with those individuals to revamp some of the work that we're going to do to make it more focused on observation and feedback, and really looking for some instructional pieces to help us gauge, are kids mastering things daily, and instead of waiting for the check for understanding to be more summative. So we've talked about exit tickets, and the campus principals and I have been working on what is that gonna look like? But that is the elementary data for achievement.
Do you think that the buy-in is there? So all of, and I mean that in the sense of, with our teachers, our staff, is the buy-in there? You know, the last 2 years, there's been a push, lots of new efforts being made. So I know how hard you're working, how hard your team is working. So
Where's
the
the disconnect?
disconnect is? What is it that's not happening?
We had the conversation, and one of the disconnects, we're working hard. Are we all working on the right thing? So that's the biggest part. So that's why when we met and looked at the data was, in the grand scheme of Falcon 5, there are two big heavy hitters for us where we can really impact student performance, and that is student talk and check for understanding. Our check for understanding, maybe we're not hitting the rigor the way we need to. And so maybe we're not bridging explicitly like we should. And so that's something we've talked about moving into this year is exit tickets on a lesson that show it's a check for understanding, but it's an intentional bridging to expose students to the rigor. And I'm not saying teach to a test, and that star shouldn't be the word that comes out of the teacher's mouth. It's more like, let's level up and let's check how you would do on like an upper level question. Or let me give you the challenge of the day, but really internally, we're exposing them to like a word problem with what we just taught them with, and they're having to apply. That's there. I don't think we have a problem with buy-in, because we have very passionate teachers. It's the purpose. And that's why the passion, purpose, and possibilities is so important this year, because yes, you guys are, no one's waking up saying, I don't want my students to succeed, but it's the how, and making sure everyone understands the how, and that observation and feedback is a gift. It's not ugly. We don't need to take it personal. It's, I'm gonna help you improve. I'm investing in you because you're investing in our kids, and at the end of the day, we're all here because no one wants to say 48% of our kids are approaching grade level. We want to say 100% of our kids are meeting grade level. And to get there, there's some courageous conversations and just a culture shift that needs to happen about we're all not there yet. And we're all
Embracing that continuous improvement, embracing the growth, embracing that there's always more to learn no matter what position you're in, that we're all driving towards excellence.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we're going to talk about excellence.
The new programs that we're going to adopt later on, we'll try to see if that's what we need. Will that help capture a lot of kids that teachers are really seeing in them?
So I will say this for teachers, we don't have a built-in metric for teachers to check on how they're performing throughout the year. That's a valid or reliable tool. So if we were to adopt MAP, which I know we have later on, that's one way that we're going to be able to identify kids throughout the year. The other piece is the curriculum, especially in the math curriculum. This curriculum it's built like a what if. If the student is struggling with this, then do this. If the students, which we struggle with this, are on or above level, this is what we do with them. So that's built into the system and this culture that we're building of everyone grows. Whether you're on grade level or not, you're growing. And so the previous curriculum that they used at the elementary, a lot of it was left up for them to pick and choose, and it actually wasn't as structured. The teachers, that committee, they want structure. They're like, give me a block and tell me the things that should fit in there. And that's why they ultimately chose this one. I'll just share with you the EOC data. So EOC data, actually I have it on full screen here. So for English 1, we were just at 2/3 of our students passing. We're right there with the state on English 1. English 2, this was a big jump. So from last year, we were in the 60s. We jumped to 75%. And so we are going to replicate those efforts of what produced. There was a lot of up and moving around, a lot of discourse, and I'm definitely going to tap into a particular staff member at that campus who really drove that bus there to produce that result. Algebra 1 was a drop, and so Algebra 1, I'm hoping that with this EOC boot camp, we are going to be able to recapture a lot of those kids at retake. So I'll be able to come back in July to hopefully to give you the updated. Biology and US history are never an issue for us. We always do very, very well on that. And there were increases in the meets and masters from the previous year. So that was the goal of the high school. And we have revisited our intervention. So I don't know if you recall, 2 board meetings ago, we asked for you to approve our English interventionist at the high school. We did not have intervention built into the master schedule. We do in this upcoming school year, so that is absolutely going to help with doing. And then for Algebra 1, we have restructured our intervention for math because we had, it was not intentional. And for no fault of anyone, but we had kids who had failed their 8th grade math star in the intervention class with kids who had failed the Algebra 1 EOC. The level of exposure to content are very different there. And so I'm looking at Ms. Jerry because he helped bring that to light for me. But so we've restructured how we assign those students those classes, and then we're writing what the curriculum will look like it'll be different. So someone who is in there all year has all year, so we chunk it and we supplement. Whereas those that are there that have already taken the EOC, we're planning on a semester because they're going to pass that test in December and not need to be an intervention. So we revamped that. I don't want to be all doomsday. There is some highlight on here, and that is our growth by cohort, because I talked about you're either growing or you're achieving. And so when the data came in, I was like, okay, I've got to look at it a different way. I've got to make sure, because we don't have growth data officially from the state yet. But what you'll see on this sheet, and I'll zoom in so y'all can see, is when you take into account our 3rd grade students, so these are the kids that were 3rd grade last year, they were 4th grade this year, they jumped in their performance from 7 to 75. When you look at the Spanish language arts, so our Spanish testers, again, you've got to take into account there was less kids there, but there was a jump in the overall achievement. Math in 3rd to 4th grade, there was not a jump. Let's look at the 4th grade cohort. So these kids that were 4th graders last year, they jumped to 74. Those same kids in math jumped to 64. We see a dip from 5th to 6th grade. And we see a dip from 5th to 6th grade in RELA. And again, we've been talking about transitions. Maybe we're going to have our personalized counseling and checking in with those kids as they transition to middle school and learn the responsibility of being in middle school. But you'll see there's a dip from 6th to 7th math, which again, that takes out all those advanced kids there. But you'll see we held strong there on 6th to 7th, and then when you look at 7th to 8th, 7th math to 8th grade math, 30% almost gain, and then 59 to 69, 7th and 8th grade. So there is growth. As to whether that growth is going to translate into a higher domain 2A accountability rating, I don't know. But there is some growth cohort to cohort. I won't have any more of that information until we get like the finalized data sets, but based on what we have now, that's where we're at.
What can you do about that 6th to 7th grade math? I mean, taking those kids out of the equation, you're not even comparing apples to apples ever.
You're never.
Right? So you just kind of have to live with it.
Yeah, but I think that.
I mean, obviously you want to increase that, but it's looking at that 6th to 7th is almost not even necessary.
It's almost not, but at the end of the day, they still count.
No, they count. I get it, but it's not a direct comparison, right?
No,
Okay.
because it's different kids in the bucket. But at the end of the day, they should all be achieving. And
Right.
so when we look, what the point is like looking at, we're gonna have an opportunity with math and with our check for understanding and our exit ticket data to be able to respond to where they are sooner instead of waiting, because the test data that we present to you, those are tests that we make.
Right.
We're not perfect. And so I believe that, being just a little more intentional with making sure that we're closing every lesson, checking in on, did they understand what was taught? And if more than 20% don't, then that's something I need to go back and recycle. And that's gonna change some of our PLCs and our plannings, and we've started talking about that too. It might look a little different, because we've gotta respond to things now that we have these tools at our fingertips and not just wait.
On those checks for understanding, like specifically like the hazing tickets you're talking about,
Yeah.
is that like a, you feel that's a way for them to reciprocate the information that they've learned?
Yeah.
I mean, it's, rather than checking a box and finishing
Yes,
the test.
and it doesn't have to be multiple choice, it doesn't even have to be pencil paper, but it needs to be intentional, and it needs to facilitate, like at the beginning of the year, I wouldn't even do pencil paper, I would do discussion and get them to like orally articulate their response, and then you start transitioning them to, now's your time to show me you know it. And it's not, we're not taking tests, it might be 1, 2, it could be a bell ringer at the beginning and something at the end. We've already started talking about like, because some of that comes from, it's gonna come from my team on purchasing the right resources for them to pull from. Because what we don't wanna do is give teachers more to have to create, and systemically. If 4th grade math is using it at both campuses, so we can say, okay, where are we at, are we calibrated with how we're doing? So lots of work ahead. I'm very confident we will get there, but passion, purpose, possibilities is gonna be what's gonna drive our work. We're gonna remember why we're here, and then we know where we're going, and we've gotta produce those outcomes for those kids.
Is there a way to factor in some help for these kids and algebra, if that's, and get them, finding tutors has always been a big problem.
So we built in the intervention lab class for those students, and I will say last year, the biggest thing was getting it built into the master schedule. This year is being more intentional, like writing and building a scope and see, because that's not a real class, it's a local class. And so we have the autonomy to build in, based on data, what should they cover when? And so that, and we did not have that last year. That's been our biggest reflection that they've given. And so the more intentional we are about building that, they were great. The 2 teachers that did it, they were fantastic. But the more we give them and the more intentional we are, like you do this then, and we're checking, okay, did they hit the mark on that? No, let's go back and build in another reteach to get them ready for that. December for the high school, and then the 8th graders going up, they have all year. We could be supplementing everything that they're being taught in Algebra 1 as they're learning it.
And if they don't get it, then it's just gonna be downhill from there.
And then they have to keep retaking it. So we want it to be like they're done, and they never have to think about it again. Any other questions? Okay. All right, I have the next item. Okay, so balance scorecard. Super excited. This is the end of cycle 1, and in my eyes, perfect timing, because we're moving into hopefully adopting new curriculum, new tools, and really looking at what's ahead. And so in your packets, I've gone in and collected all of the data points, and you have those in front of you. And because we're at the end of the cycle, we also have the data for the far right column as to whether we met that goal or not. So in 1.1, I mentioned earlier, 93.9 was our attendance rate, so we fell shy of our goal and did not earn our point there. Positive classroom environment walkthrough data. We met our goal. However, this is particularly one of the things I want to work on this upcoming year, because our achievement data does not reflect, it does not align with this. And so this is the feedback. I ran a report on the feedback that is given to teachers based on classroom walkthroughs. And so this is going to be a big part of the observation and feedback cycle that I want to work with campuses on, because it should be in alignment with our performance data, and it should be in alignment with our grades, like our report card grades for students. For example, a teacher that has a 30 or 40% achievement rate should not be receiving only positive marks on their walkthrough. And then a student in that particular class who did not successfully pass their assessment should not have a 99 or like a 90 in the class. All of that should be calibrated. So that's a lot of work, and we started some of those conversations this year, but that is what this particular data set drew a little bit of a red flag. Looking at drug and alcohol incidents, we had 19 this year. Our goal was 14. However, moving into the next balanced scorecard cycle, we're not going to track incidents. We're going to track recidivism rate because we don't want to deter our administrators from administrating when there's an issue like that. Like, there's going to be incidents. What we want to track more closely is a student who has an incident, are they repeat incidents? Because then are our intervention efforts working or not? So the way we're going to look at the data is going to look a little different, because if kids are bringing things they shouldn't bring to school, I'm not going to say I hit my 14, I'm not going to do another one. That's the wrong target to look at. We're going to look at recidivism rate. So the same goes with violent incidents. We had 12 this year. The goal was 10, so we did not hit that. However, on the survey data points, out of the 20 indicators, we hit 19. So we did meet the 15 out of 20 goal. But that overarching goal of students reporting that they feel safe at school, the composite score was a 65%, and the goal was 100. So we did not hit that marker. Moving into cycle 2, with regard to the students reporting they're safe, we've discussed revisiting the questions, maybe even compartmentalizing, because safe can mean a lot of different things for kids. So maybe departmentalizing, do they feel safe as in there are no intruders, like fear of intruders, feeling safe among their friends, feeling safe when they're at home, like being able to pinpoint, because right now it's, I feel safe. And so revisiting that. 1.2, looking at student engagement. When it came to chronic absenteeism, we did reduce. Last year we ended at 14.1. This year we ended at 13.3. So we did reduce almost the whole percent, which is huge, but we did not hit the 12%. That is an indicator that will roll over into the next BSC. The Lone Star Cup, we were shooting to be top 15th, but we tied for 45th, so we did not hit that mark. Percent of students participating in extracurricular activities. This is a survey item that students report on. 60% reported that they're in an extracurricular. We've had the discussion about moving into balance cycle 2, that we will find another way to measure that, not relying on student surveys. So we did not hit the 75% mark there. But when it came to students, the student surveys and the survey markers, 13 out of the 13 were hit. And the goal was 14 out of 14, but there was only 13 questions. So, and you have all the data, updated data in the back of your packet. So the North Star goal of hitting the 75% of co-curricular activities, we did not hit that, therefore it's red. Academic achievement. Very excited about first grade reading EOI composite performance. Last year we ended at 61, the goal was 70, we hit 72%. That means our phonics instruction, the M-class, the intervention has worked. Change takes time, and this is our kids being ready to read. So this is, it gives me chills, I get excited. But, so we hit that mark, and so I'm super excited about that. On our third grade students, meets or masters for their reading star, we did dip in our meets and masters, so we were at 36, and last year we were at 37. Did not hit that mark. Fifth grade students, meets or masters expectations on Science Star. Our growth on Science Star was in more of the approaches. We hit the 60 in approaches. We did not hit our mark for meets and masters. Eighth grade students, meets or masters on Math Star. We went from 49 to 37, so there was a dip there, did not hit our mark. However, on the markers for the survey, out of the 10 items that were questioned, we hit the mark on those, and so therefore that one is green. But if you look at the North Star goal, we did not hit the third grade or the eighth grade, so that's why that one is red. I'll close out priority 1 and then take any questions before going to priority 2. For CCMR, industry-based certifications, we had 223, definitely beat the goal of 125, therefore it's very green. College readiness indicator. This is preliminary because we really don't get that finalized number for another couple of weeks, but right now preliminary we're at 80% and we ended last year at 77, and so we definitely hit that goal. Enrollments in level 3 and 4 career tech classes, we had 623 and the goal was 710. We'll have to revisit that to see if that's actually something worth measuring. we have to look at that. Survey data, we hit all 3 indicators, so, and at the end, our North Star goal was to hit 66 to 80%, which we did, so therefore that one is green. Any questions on priority 1 before I go to priority 2? Okay. Priority 2, this is where we're looking at our staff satisfaction and engagement. The first indicator you see there is gray because there is not a survey question on the staff survey that answered this, and there was no true way for me to pull that data. And so achievement of T-test goals, if that is something we are gonna roll over to balanced scorecard 2, I'd wanna maybe revisit it and maybe tie it to T-test rating, because that could be an indicator of success. So I left that one gray, and therefore the North Star goal there is gray. When looking at the survey items, we did hit 16 out of 16, and kudos to our principals, because that has been something that our principals have been working on, is when our staff answer their survey, they indicate that they feel they're provided the training that they need, and we experienced a big jump in our last year's rating to this year on that one, so super glad to see that one was green. Staff satisfaction, our retention rate preliminarily is at 89%, so looking really good. We're actually close to being 100% staff for next year as there would. That's amazing for this time in the summer, this early in the summer, to be so close to 100% staff. So super, super excited about that. And then we hit all of our markers as far as the staff satisfaction markers. Positive feedback on the direction of the district and culture and their willingness to recommend our district to others. So those were some of the questions they would answer on that. Teacher absenteeism, I was very happy to see that one turn green, and I would attribute that to our campus leaders and the implementation of our blackout dates. And that was something new this year, looking at, we have some built-in breaks already built into our calendar. We don't need to add an extra day before or after those breaks. So we implemented blackout dates, and so you see that we went from 10.1 to 8, so that was a good indicator. Level of participation in instructional or service activities, that's where our staff attended some type of activity that was optional. We hit 60% of the 77. That's a survey question. If that was something we'd roll over, have to look at how we measure that a little different. But hit all the markers. Again, this one went back to the 9 items from last year. And so we hit all of those markers, and the data's there. So we got that one green. But we wanted the overall North Star goal was for 75% of our staff to participate in those optional, and we didn't hit that number, so therefore that one's red. Safety and well-being, we want our state security personnel student ratio to be at 150. We hit 146. The drills and exercises, we wanted 63. We hit 46, and then we hit our markers for the survey data. However, the reporting of feeling safe at school, this is the staff reporting that, we hit 69%, and we needed 100 to meet our goal, so therefore that one is red. Questions on priority 2?
In the survey specifically, and forgive me for not remembering this one specifically, was there an option whenever they reported that they didn't feel safe, or only 69% reported feeling safe, to elaborate on why they didn't?
The only verbatims were what are 2 good things about the district, and what are 2 things that need to improve. Those were the only open-ended. That would be a good idea for, I'm looking at Kristen for priority 2 next year, because that would help us. I put a lot of weight in verbatims because you have got to feel so passionate about something to actually type it. So that would be actually really good data.
And one of the great things is we talked about doing this in
Multiple.
the year, and then
Ongoing.
you can correct it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just looking
Yep.
at the survey again.
And so it's almost like when we talk about growth for students, it's the same thing for us. Like, we do the survey, okay, let's implement some things. Did we make an impact? Yeah, love that. Priority 3, all right, parent involvement opportunities. Our goal was 65, we had 155 opportunities. Survey data markers, we hit those. And we wanted our opportunities to increase, which we hit that, so that's the North Star goal was green. 3.2, community partnerships, advisory board meetings with our construction oversight committee, our parent roundtable, and with our realtor breakfast and all that, we've hit 17 when our goal was 8. And then students participating in community service. This is, again, something that they fill out on the survey. We hit 43% and the goal was 70, and that's why that one is red. But we did hit our markers on the survey data for 3.2. Customer satisfaction, parent survey data. We wanted to hit 9 out of 9, but we only hit 7 out of the 9. And so therefore that one is red. And then our exit ticket data, we wanted to have 200 of those completed and only 118 were completed this year. And so therefore that is why we are at a red. And that parent satisfaction at 100%, that's directly tied to the 7 out of 9, therefore that one's red. Questions about priority 3? Priority 4, internal customer satisfaction. Our retention rate shows up again. We met that goal. Technology work orders, 4,331. I don't know how that would be red, green, yellow. They are completing the work orders. I guess you would measure that through the technology survey data, which was overwhelmingly positive from our staff. And so if that was something we needed to look at, like, you never want to stop people. You don't want to have a cap on how many work orders. Things happen, a computer. So trying to figure out a metric that would help gauge that would be beneficial. But yes, there were only 2 questions that specifically talked about technology, so I adjusted that, and they hit both of those markings, and so that is why that one is green.
And that's everything, right? That's any work order for
Anything.
a student computer
Mhm.
or iPad.
Anything. And I will say, it's gone up tremendously in the last 2 years, like the overall satisfaction, and especially when it came, one of the questions was about, like, I feel like I have the tools and training needed to embed technology, and I think that one was above 90%. So the smart boards, the training with smart boards, Dr. Gatlin will spend time on campuses and available, so it's available to them if they need it, and so the support is definitely there. All right, 4.2. Audit results, so no findings. We didn't have any findings when we had our most recent audit, and that was the goal, so that's green. Our first rating, it's a lagging indicator, so we received above standard and not superior for the previous year, but we got that this year, and so that's why this last column is not filled. We won't receive that till the fall. So I'll make sure to circle back and update you on that when that comes out. On the survey data, we hit the marking, and then on our most recent transparency stars, we got 3 stars, and that's why that one is green. However, I am color coding the last column based on the most recent data for the first rating, and so we're going to leave that one red unless we get a superior rating, and we could go back and fix that one. For 3, strategic allocation of resources based on survey data, we were at a 1 out of 1, so we hit our mark. For our payroll budget, our goal was anywhere from 78 to 82. We were very, very close. However, this last few weeks, our payroll budget went above the range, and so we are at 82.62. Therefore, that box is red. Our administrative costs, 11.5 was the goal. We were at 12.31. Again, we were close, but are no longer green there. But we are constant. Our CIPs and our DIPs are living documents, and we've made sure that they're aligned. It's a cascade, and so therefore, on that far right side, that is green because we have been updating that. 4.4, planning for growth. We've had community meetings, we had 10 of them, so therefore we met our goal of 5. We did not do an updated demographic study, so that's not applicable, so we're just gonna leave it at that. And then our current strategic plan, which is what we have been working on, that we've been updating our BSC. And so that one's green. And so since we held enough meetings and we've communicated about, you know, our bond planning, our community advisory committee, all of that is on there, so that is green. And last but not least, we've got 4.5, well-maintained facilities, preventative maintenance schedule. Dr. Skinner. All right. I had talked a lot.
You got one more.
And this last one,
Got one more.
I'm tagging on a friend to come in and talk to us about the homeschool UIL participation opt-out.
Okay, so in the 89th legislation, you know, there was like a lot of changes. And so something they addressed was homeschool participation in UIL activities specifically. And so the UIL addressed it in their legislative council as well a few weeks ago. So in the past, you had to opt in to homeschool participation. Going forward, you have to opt out. And so, and if you don't take any action on September 1st, then automatically your homeschool kids in your zone can participate. If you opt out, those homeschool kids can still participate. They just have to go to the nearest district that will accept them. And so in next month's meeting, I will come to you with an action item to make that decision, whether opt in or opt out. Make sense? Any questions? All right, thank you.
All right. For operations report. So we did receive TASB policy update 125. So those of you who are on the policy committee, Kayla and I are working through those. I think there was like 8 or 9 local policies that are impacted. Not very much to those. We do expect this to be the first of probably several. Legislative update, you know, for TASB to go through and organize all changes. So be on the lookout for that. Dr. Ruiz and our team have been working on a communication plan with Ms. Fortenberry for the re-trafficking for next school year. We will be working on that throughout the course of the summer, trying to make sure everybody understands what the traffic plan will look like. Some also wanted to point out that we're going to be looking at possibly posting some RFP for storm responsiveness. So a lot of districts will go ahead of time, summertime, to get someone on board, so that way if we do have a disaster, we have a vendor that's already been vetted, that's already been approved, and so that way we can hit the ground running. If you remember with Barrels, we had vendors come up to meet us at the high school in Bell Tower because we needed to hurry up and respond, and so we would just like to be proactive with that. So we'll be posting an RFP for that sometime soon. You can see that when we give you a heads up. A couple things just going through. I do want to let you know, so under maintenance, we're required to do every 2 years a natural gas line test, mandated by the state. 2 years ago, we paid $9,000 for this test. The first bid we got back this year is $27,000. So we're hoping this vendor is a little bit higher, and so Mr. Turner and his team are working on getting some more prices. I wanted to go ahead and give that to you tonight, though, in case it does remain at that level. We'll have to receive board action to be able to approve that, but we're hoping that that's not the case. So it sounds like some of the vendors now realize it's state approved for state mandated, so they're all increasing their prices on that. Child nutrition, just briefly, Simone and her team have been working really hard trying to just really sort through what next year is going to look like. It's really difficult. It's kind of a guessing game, if you will, because we don't know what our participation is going to look like. We're trying to create a budget and staff appropriately to be able to provide us meals that we need to, but not overstaff because we can't afford it if we have a decrease. And so she has been working with a consultant to try to just organize that. One of the things that we do have to set this summer is our meal prices. Our meal prices are a little bit higher than where we left out. We have to increase a certain amount each year, even when we're on CEP. But right now, we're looking at the possibility, and Simone's still working through other options because we want it lower, but right now it looks like that our elementary price will be about $365 and our secondary price about $385. That is slightly higher than some of the districts around us, so we don't like that. Unfortunately, we're given a USDA price lunch equity tool that we have to utilize, and so we're kind of looking at what are some options that we can try to use that tool to even decrease it some more. to get it more, so it's more manageable. So our goal though is to start the media marketing plan that she and Ms. Fortenberry have been working on. You figure almost $4 a day times 5 days a week, times 4 weeks a month, that adds up quickly for a parent. So we want to make sure our parents are well aware. But then more importantly, to remember that we need them to be thinking about filling out the application for free and reduced. So that's released July 1st. And so those guys have a marketing plan ready to start pushing that out as soon as it's released so we can take a look at it and see all the new things. So I wanted to just kind of share that information with you guys. And we want to make sure our community is well aware of what that paid price is needs to be. Just a couple other quick things. We do have some huge celebrations in our transportation department. We had a job fair the other day, and we only secured one person, but we secured one person, and we're very proud of that. But one of the things that's really cool that Ms. Bailey, Ms. Tedger Bailey, our director, has done is she believes that everyone should grow and everyone should be trying to be better. And so we actually had 2 of our bus aides that she's encouraged to, hey, let's get your license. You don't want to be an aide forever. Like, let's do this. And so we actually had 2 of our current bus aides successfully pass that test just recently. So that's really cool. That's very life changing. That's a huge increase in salary money for them and pay. And so we're very proud of those guys and very proud of Ms. Bailey for pushing our employees to be better, as we all should. Any questions regarding? All right, if not, we'll jump into our bond report. So just a couple of quick things, and I have some pictures of the middle school to show you. Our safety security, which is our door access and cameras, we are near completion of that. We have some door hardware problems, scheduled problems. They're delaying, again, some of our hardware. We have some cameras that have not come in yet, but as far as that goes, we've already started some of our punch list items. To start getting ahead of that. Feel that we'll be good to go. No concerns about it being ready come school time, but we did want to have this done at the end of June, and depending on what time that equipment shows up, we may or may not make that mark. However, there's no concerns again for the school year. Our CTE and gym high school project, we had our bids came in Thursday. We were super excited. We had 5 really high quality contractors here. Who showed up and gave us bids. Our our 3 lowest bids were within about $1 million of each other, which on a $46 million project, that's pretty good. And so we are currently vetting through those. We go through their subs. We look at how much work they've done with their subs. We look at the teams they're presenting, their superintendents, their project managers. We want to see some successful teams and successful jobs that they've done. So we're organizing that, and then we'll be soon scheduling a board subcommittee to show you guys, and so we can make an official decision and we can get someone on board at the July board meeting. So very excited to have that part done. Our middle school is moving right along. And so as soon as the kids were done, we had CMOS move in. Some of you may have seen that, especially if you went to basketball camp or anything like that. You showed up on Monday and the parking lot was already rearranged on you. And so those guys have been really working hard. I just want to, each board meeting, now that we finally have some construction going on, to just kind of share a few pictures and kind of explain what's going on. I would also say, board members, at any point in time you want to go walk one of the sites, just let me know. We do have to wear hard hats and all that stuff. You should see our executive team walking around with hard hats on. But let me know. I'll be happy to walk you through that at any point. So this is just kind of some preliminary front work. So this is where our new addition would be. As we move to some of the outside, we've had a lot of rain in the last week it was. And so that's kind of delayed some of the project area there. You can see, I'm going to use this one, I think. Yeah, so you can kind of see the concrete tore up over on the side here. That is going to be some of our storm sewer and some of those pipes that we have to run under there that we have to go ahead and get moving on. There's some better pictures of that, of them digging that part out. That's why that side of the bus loop is closed off. We put pressure on them every time we meet with them. Like, remember, we have to have this open come school time. And so they're working very quick on this to make sure that we've got concrete back in place before we have buses coming. The back driveway, so if you will, this back, you can't really see this thing. The top right picture, so the left side would be the baseball field to kind of put you where you're at. So part of the middle school project is to increase the capacity of the detention pond out there. And so they were having to run the pipe under that portions of the driveway cutting through there. And some of the changes, it wasn't something we could just tunnel under, so they're having to cut some sections out. Again, this will be completed prior to school starts. These are some aerial shots of just some of the work. This was at the last week, I believe some of these were, where you can see up top is the driveway sections that are cut out. The bottom is our work site for our additions. And so area A, and I brought the pointer to hopefully it would work, and it didn't. So area A is our front part of the building where our additions are going to happen, but also some of our renovations. And so when we go through our pictures, these were some of the science classrooms that we have now dismantled. It's one large classroom at this point in time. And so this was actually at the end of, I think, or right at the first of week 2. I mean, that's how fast these guys were working. So have a lot of demolition that's been done. These are those 2 classrooms that are really kind of cleaned up at this point. And so in between these 2 classrooms, so if you look at the bottom, at the top left picture, the section of wall that's in the middle between the 2 doorways, that essentially will be our new hallway that leads into our new addition. Okay, if I had a pointer that if it would work better on that screen, I'd show it to you. But so there's some better pictures here. Actually, to make that hallway, we had to slide those other classrooms over by the middle school and by the nurse. Sorry. Which then created our hallway all the way through. So we're sitting in the hallway to the math wing to take this picture, looking back at the front of the building. And where you see the light is windows from those science classrooms that are up there. Where you don't see the light, the section there, that's actually going to be the hallway into our addition at the front of the building. And some better angles of this. This is where those 2 classrooms were. You can see from the left side, that's coming from the math wing, where that hall will go basically just straight across where those classrooms once were. The classrooms will be slid over to the right side of that picture. This is standing in the hallway, the new hallway, what will be the new hallway. If I'm taking this picture, to my back would be the new addition, the front of the middle school. Straight ahead would be where that new hallway will be. You can kind of see the gentleman working down that hallway. That's the math wing. So you can kind of picture how that hall would go. Moving on to area D. So this is our ag class, art classroom, where we're creating some we're splitting one of those classrooms in half, but we're also going to create another hallway space to be able to reroute some of the students to help with our traffic flow congestion. So top left picture is the ag class. It was currently ag class this past year. It's a massive class. It's been completely gutted. That will be 2 new classrooms. And then the bottom right picture is the art class. I wanted to include this picture because what's between those 2 classrooms is our current IDF. Uh-oh. Those pictures aren't there. Is our current IDF and our fire alarm. So we're going to actually move our IDF and fire alarm to where the whiteboard is in the bottom right picture. Those will be a new closet, storage space, IDF room. And then where you see where that IDF is will be our new hallway. And the new pictures aren't on this. Lastly, we are replacing our water fountains. We had a lot of just old water fountains need to be cleaned up. We'll tile that wall there where the water fountain is. One of the other challenges that we have from a custodial standpoint and safety standpoint is that, especially at the middle school, every time someone gets water, there's water under the water fountain. For whatever reason, we like to make sure water splashes everywhere. And so what we see a lot of schools doing for safety reasons, they put off walk-off carpet is what it's called. And so there'll be a small carpet space. It's outdoor carpet, antimicrobial, all those kind of things. But then rather than messing up our tile and our wax and our glue under there with that water sitting there, we actually can just take that piece of carpet up in a few years and replace it if we need to. But it's walk-off carpet is what it'll be at each restaurant, each water fountain. Any questions about those pictures? We have our Community Construction Oversight Committee meeting tomorrow, and our goal is we're going to meet them out there at the middle school, and we're going to walk them through it. So I've already told them to wear closed-toe shoes, and we're going to bring hard hats, and we're going to walk them through so that way our community can see it. That's what we want to be, as transparent as possible, and so they can ask questions and do what they need to do to make sure they feel good about it. So, any questions bond related? Yeah, it was fun to bring our executive team through. They were surprised. A lot's happened really fast with that.
You didn't bring that video of Dr. Rees
Well,
taking down that wall?
so I will tell you that Dr. Gatlin is hiding back there. I went to her and said, I got to get this video in my presentation. And we had some technical difficulties. And so we had intentions of telling you that we had to hire in some big guns to come help us because we were worried about timelines, you know. And, Dr. Ruiz was taking out, those of you who haven't seen the video, she was invited to get a sledgehammer and take out some frustrations. Not that middle school principals have any of that. But she did a great job of demo work and maybe have a new career out of it. I don't know. All right, thank you guys.
It's only been an hour since I saw you last. Okay, so moving on to the tax collection report. Through May 2025, we have collected a little over $19 million in both current and prior year tax collections, sitting at almost 94% of tax collections of the current collections, where last year at the same time we were at a little over 94%. We still have $2.2 million of remaining tax levy to collect, and we still have the month of June and then any other year-end entries that we need to make related to that. Moving on to the general fund report, we are 92% through the year. You will notice that we have collected 100% of the local revenues that we had anticipated for the year. But for state, it is only at 64%, and that is based on the way that the state pays us, which is September through August for the current school year. So that's why that's going to be lagging a little bit, but it is still on track to be where we anticipated it to be. Federal, we are sitting at 53%. Some of that are the indirect costs for grants that we have not charged yet. And there are also a few FEMA reimbursements that we have not yet received, and that's why that is a little lower than we would want it to be. So in total, sitting at 76% of expected revenues compared to the 92% completed through the year. With expenditures, we've expended 89% of the general fund, but with those encumbrances included, we are at 92%. So on track with that. Salaries and benefits, we've expended 90% of that through May. That is a little lower than we would expect than the 92%, but we expect it to be there because we still have that year-end entry to make of those accruals. And then we also have summer school that we try to get paid by the end of June. So that'll be closer to the 100% once we get 100% through the year. Any questions on the general fund report? Okay. Moving on to the food service report, we have collected 82% of revenues on food service and have expended 74% with 80% also including the encumbrances, and again 79% of salaries and benefits. So what we're seeing is some of that budget may have been a little high, which allowed us to drop it for this upcoming year, and you'll see that compared with the proposed budget where we were able to estimate some of that lower in the upcoming proposed budget. On the capital projects fund report, so Dr. Skinner comes up here and presents the fund operational side of it, and then I get to present the financial side of what we've spent to date. So May 31st, 2025, we've expended $7.6 million out of the $46 million of bond proceeds we've received to date, leaving $38 million remaining of those proceeds. But now that we have so many projects up and going, and we're actually able to see a lot more of that, that is going to continue to get paid much faster. And then now we are moving on to federal grants. So board policy CB local states that we are to give public notice of federal grant applications through a board information item. So listed here I have all of our federal grants, but not just those that we are going to apply for, but also those that have a remaining balance as of May 31st, and also our state and local grants that still have a remaining balance. So our entitlements for program year 2026, in federal grants, those entitlements sit at $1.5 million. Those are conservative estimates. They usually up that a little bit after they have all of their additional information. Program year 2025, and then we have something in 2020, and of that, we have $623,000 remaining from those federal grants. Our state and local grant programs, those don't really have entitlements so much as awards, so we do not have those amounts right now. But again, I have included those so that you see what we still have pending in the state and local grant funds. And that is all I have tonight, unless you have questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will now move to business and discussion items. Any motion?
I make the motion that the board approve the purchase of NWEA map assessment for the 2025-2026 school year, not to exceed $79,000.
I have a motion from Ms. Grassi. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second from Ms. Sullivan.
The moment has finally come. This is the proposal for NWEA map. This would be the maximum number allowed. I had it based off of our entire roster, but this would allow us the opportunity to begin implementing map assessment for all kinder through 12th grade students. This will provide us valuable data on where they're performing against their same age peers. Also, it'll allow us the opportunity to track growth. And so when we're looking at teacher performance, it's from the day the student arrives in the class to the day the student leaves, what impact is there? And there's just so many valuable data points, and really excited if this is adopted. We have a rollout plan, we've got training that we can get scheduled for our administrators and then our teachers. And so I will answer any other questions you may have.
What were the intervals that like on the checks?
At beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year. And because it's a nationally norm reference test, we fall into their window. So September, the middle of year window is a December to January, and then it's in April, May. So Ms. Garcia, our district testing coordinator, has already developed a testing calendar that will build in those opportunities without having kids being tested back to back to back. So.
Any other questions? All in favor? All are in favor.
I make a motion that the board accept the recommendation to renew the property and casualty and workers' compensation insurance through Lee Insurance, McGiff, Siebels, and Williams of Texas, and the automobile and legal liability with TASB for the 2024-2025 year.
I have a motion from Ms. Grassi. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second from Ms. Sullivan.
All right, so good evening. So I have with us here tonight Ben Odom with McGriff, Siebels, and Williams, and also David Francis with Lee Insurance to go over the property insurance portion of the renewal. Some of you guys may not have this in your packet. It is in the updated electronic packet. You do have some extras.
Thank you all for letting us speak tonight. We have nothing but really good news. This is a pretty condensed schematic here of the property insurance, but that blue row is the current program today. So we have $189.4 million in buildings or assets. Our per occurrence limit is $50 million. That means that in one single occurrence, the most of the insurance carrier is going to provide is $50 million. Very standard structure in today's property market, especially Harris County. And then we have $10 million of flood, $10 million of earthquake, $25,000 all other perils deductible, think fire, theft, things of that nature. With a 3% per location named storm deductible subject to a $250,000 minimum per occurrence. 1% per location for all other wind with a $100,000 minimum per occurrence. And that total premium was $1.466 million. This year, we were able to increase the limit from 50 to 75 and make a pretty substantial change to the way that the deductible reads. So it's now 3% per building. So think about a location, we get multiple buildings at that location, but if only one building was damaged, we're subject to 3% of that location. So now it's building specific with a minimum of 100,000 instead of 250,000 for named storm. Same change on the per location versus per building for all other wind with the same $100,000 minimum. And it's coming in at a $222,000 premium reduction, which is about a 15% rate reduction. So a great result. The market's finally soft again. These meetings are a lot more enjoyable than they were from 21 to 23. So makes the job fun. Happy to answer any questions.
That's good news. We need more good news. So the per building, is that any, obviously in one, let's use the high school for example, where you have a main building and then if you have a separate building that's separated, it's not continuous and that's considered two separate buildings, correctly? So the new CTE center will be a separate building from the main structure, correct? Even though it's all part of the high school campus.
Yeah,
Okay.
so much more favorable wording in the policy. That's what it used to be until about 2022 when the market got really, really hard. So we're finally starting to get back to where carriers have a lot more competition, and when they have more competition, this is the result.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, so great news there. Regarding, we went out for both an RFP and RFQ on an RFP and or quotes for all of our insurance coverage. And with our TASB, or with our auto liability, cybersecurity coverage, and legal liability, I am recommending that we go with TASB. I've included in here the differences in the amounts that we received from another company, which is Insurica, or some may have heard of it, called PCAP. And in all instances, TASB came in under, except for the automobile liability. TASB did come in at about $9,400 higher. However, PCAP did put something in there that they wanted us to commit to 3 years, and if we decided to commit within that 3-year period, we would be subject to an early termination fee of 20% of those fees. So it was difficult for me to recommend that one. I'm recommending TASB on that one as well. And then workers' comp, we've seen a lot of increases to our insurance premiums. Mr. Odom went out and received 5 different quotes for us, and then we also went out and asked for quotes from 2 additional companies. We received a quote from one company, and that was TASB, the TASB Risk Management Fund, and they came in at $132,000, which again was the lowest of all of the companies. One thing that I would like to mention is you are going to see total payroll differences that are a little bit different for some of these. The one that is higher at $31 million is using that audited amount from the prior year, but our payroll decreased this year. And so I took what our payroll was this year and increased it by 3%, the 3% that we were hoping to be able to give in a compensation increase to get those quotes. 3 of them came back and gave us a new quote based on that salary amount, and TASB was still the lowest. One thing that I'd like to mention though is our salaries will go up more than the original 3% that we had anticipated due to legislation allowing us to give a higher raise to our more experienced teachers. So I will be going to them, once approved by the board, to increase that and to come back to you guys as an information item to let you know what that increased premium is, rather than waiting at the end of the year after they have audited the results and we're having to go back and increase that amount. But I do anticipate after giving them 2 different payroll amounts and them being the lowest, that they will continue to be the lowest.
Any questions? All in favor? All are in favor? All right.
I make a motion that the board approve the proposed raises and adjustments as presented and the salary and compensation manual for 2025-2026.
Have a motion for Ms. Carrasco, do I have a second?
My second.
Have a second for Ms. Sullivan? 10%.
Yes, so this is actually going to include the salary and compensation manual, which includes all of the increases to our pay scales. It is also going to include the raises that were presented to you earlier tonight. That include the 4,000 for 3 to 4 year teachers, 8,000 for the 5 years or more experience teachers, 3% for all other staff, adjustments that go along with that, $5 increase to the substitute daily rate, and an increase to the health insurance premiums of $225 to $250.
So excited.
Any questions?
I do have a question. What is our daily rate for a substitute teacher?
That would be on.
So currently it's $80 for a non-certified teacher, and then it's $90 for a certified teacher, if I remember that correctly. Then if they're long-term, it's
And we're gonna
increased.
give a $5 a day pay increase regardless of.
It's on page 201, I believe. But yes, sir, so non-degree would go from 80 to 85, bachelor's degree would go from 90 to 95, certified 105 to 110. Moving on, our long-term non-degree would go from 90 to 95, long-term degree subs 105 to 110, and our long-term certifieds from 130 to 135.
Any other questions? All in favor? All are in favor?
I make the motion that the board adopt the proposed budget for the 2025-2026 fiscal year as presented.
Have a motion from Ms. Carrasco, do I have a second?
My second it.
Second from Ms. Sullivan?
I have one more sheet of paper to give you.
All right.
It's been a crazy couple of weeks. So this is going to, it had a small change to the debt service budget. It does include what I presented to you guys previously. It does include what was presented, but what was in the board packet had a slight change that I had not been able to update. But what I just provided to you does reflect what was presented with the general fund, food service, and debt service fund budgets from earlier tonight.
Any questions? All in favor? All are in favor? Thank you. All right.
I make a motion that the board approve budget amendment number 10 as presented, along with any functional transfers to the budget after year-end entries have been made.
I have a motion from Ms. Carrasco, do I have a second?
My second it.
Second from Ms. Sullivan?
So currently, I do not anticipate any additional budget amendments that will be needed. I did run some preliminary numbers. I projected those out based on where payroll would land after we accrued everything, based on everything that's encumbered being paid, and I did not readily see where any functional transfers would be made. However, this allows us, if there are any of those amounts, to be able to make those transfers and bring them back to you at a later date as an information item so that you see any of those transfers that I made, to ensure that we remain under budget in those functions for this year. It will have a net effect of 0 to the budget if those occur. But again, if that does happen, I would bring that back to you as an information item as I did last year.
Any questions? All in favor? All in favor?
I make a motion that the board approve the adoption of the iReady math curriculum bundle for K through 5.
I have a motion from Ms. Boraski. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Second from Ms. Sullivan.
All right, this has been a long time coming. We've been working on reviewing the EMRA math curriculums that were approved, and the committee overwhelmingly selected iReady. As I mentioned earlier, the committee really liked the structure of the block, the incorporation of the if-then approach of students being either successfully mastering the content or not. Some things that were mentioned was the TEAC alignment, the overall materials that are included. There's a digital aspect for students as well, and so we are selecting to purchase only for 2 years. As I mentioned previously, we are embarking on the Strong Foundations Planning Grant, that journey of RBs in math. So should anything come up, this would give us the opportunity if any pivots needed to be made. But the quote's included there. It's for 2 years, and that would include all of Kinder through 5. It's an EMRA bundle, so everything that is included, it's all together. It's not it's not a menu, which is what's different about the EMRA process. So everything's included for the teacher resource, the student resources, in print and digital, as well as the intervention digital component that's included.
So if approved, I really hope that our teachers are happy with this and that it will be used with fidelity and that we will see the desired outcome.
Yes, and the rollout has already been kind of planned out. We've got beginning of year PD already scheduled for them to dig in. And the really important piece that we're going to do this year that hasn't always been a practice is we're going to initially train, but we're also going to continuously train. We've got to check in about 4 to 5 weeks into the school year and say what's working, what's not, and make adjustments if needed. So with those elementary PD days, we have the perfect opportunity in the calendar. And then really just incorporating that this is the resource that we're going to use. And as we're walking as leaders, we are going to be calibrated in the look force of implementation. So yes.
This is the 2-year price.
2-year price.
Okay.
It's very, very, very affordable because they're giving us 3rd through 5th free.
Right.
For now.
Do you see anything away?
So really not. So we're gonna keep ST Math. More than anything this year, there's not a lot of new besides this. We're gonna keep ST Math because that's the conceptual piece. We're gonna keep Progress Learning, but we might just repurpose and refine how we use them. Not adding to, but just making sure what we're using it well.
Any other questions? All in favor? All are in favor?
I make a motion that the board approve the adoption of the EMRA STEMscopes math curriculum bundle for secondary levels.
I have a motion from Ms. Gratzky. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Second from Ms. Sullivan.
All right, so secondary, they really have not had a set curriculum. It's been, they use resource system, they pulled here, teachers pay teachers, teacher created materials, and they would use and pull from other programs. And so this was the overwhelmingly selected program for the secondary teachers. This would be middle school through Algebra 1 and geometry. They are throwing in geometry into this. You have the 2-year price as well there. Training will take place, and again, the expectation is this is our guaranteed resource. This is the resource that we will use. And so on that end, they will not have ST Math. Middle school did not like ST Math, nor did they use it. So we are going to refocus our efforts on those exit tickets, pulling from resources, and using progress learning.
Any questions? All in favor? All in favor?
I make a motion that the board approve the approval of the purchase of Just Right Reader decodables for K through 2 as part of Huffman ISD's phonics adoption using IMRA funds with implementation prioritization based on final budget availability.
Okay, so that, go ahead.
That was very good. That was a lot of words. I have a motion for Mr. Essick. Second for Ms. Sullivan.
So that one's particularly wordy because the quote you have in front of you is I think 123,000. And so the prioritization is math is going to take priority from the IMRA allotment. And what is left, that is the worst number. Like if we could buy it all, we'll buy that number. But then we're gonna prioritize using first grade. So the difference between the math curriculum and these decodables are, the decodables are a one-time, lifetime purchase. And so we may not have enough IMRA funds to cover what you see on that quote. If we don't, I'm going to prioritize first grade, and then in the subsequent year when we generate more IMRA, then we'll do kinder. We also don't have our final biennium number for our IMA funds. If that number, which is likely to increase, is more, and we have the wiggle room, then we'll make that purchase. But I wanted to give you the bottom line number of what the most would be, but we won't, if we don't have the amount in between those two allocations, we will only prioritize first grade and plan for kinder the following year.
Any questions?
What is so much different about what this is and what we have?
It's not different, it's actually gonna supplement what we already have. What our teachers, so in our HMH curriculum, they've been begging for decodable readers. And so at the end of last year, I reached out to HMH, I'm like, give me some decodables. Well, what they sent us, they call decodables, are not decodables. What you see here, Just Right Readers, are true decodables. So if they're teaching the short vowel sound of E, they're gonna be able to pull mini lessons and books to put in front of students' put them in their hands that are gonna help them apply the short E vowel sound. Whereas right now in the curriculum as is, it doesn't have that. And what we're buying is we're not just buying one title, we're buying the whole thing so that you can do small group of students reading the books. There's also a component where if we have the available budget where you can send home, there's some send home readers so that parents can then reinforce what's being taught and they're actually applying what phonics lesson they learned. It's been very, very needed, but first grade is gonna be our priority. And then we'll work our way to kinder, and then work our way up to second grade. And then hopefully within the next year or so, we have the full set. We're also in that purchase including for our self-contained special education classes, where we have students who are 2 or more grade levels behind. They're gonna have access to the whole library as part of this purchase so that they can fill in some of those gaps.
Any other questions? All in favor? All in favor?
I make the motion to approve Lindsay Electric to complete the electrical improvements in the advanced welding lab for an amount of $43,095.
I'll second it.
I have a motion from Ms. Grassick and a second from Ms. Sullivan.
All right, so one of the things that we had discussed a couple times, but that we were trying to break apart a couple things that we could do on our own to help with our bond projects, to get things moving faster, and also to save money, because we were worried about where we were going to fall dollar-wise, and so we wanted to identify opportunities for us to be able to save. So this is one of those. So this is the advanced lab is what we currently would be, what Mr. Duke operates out of. That lab isn't really being touched at all. We're going to handle that all in-house, and so the work of Lindsay Electric, I'll also be talking about welding machines here in just a second. That doesn't need to be run through the engineers and through all those architects and everybody. We can do that in-house with the improvements that we need to get the electrical needs that he needs to be able to run the machines in that advanced lab. And this would be funded through bond still though.
Any questions? All in favor? All in favor?
I make the motion to approve the purchase of 10 welding machines from All Tex Welding Supply Incorporated in an amount of $49,251.50.
I have a motion from Ms. Grassi, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second from Ms. Sullivan.
So we fully anticipate the shop to be functioning in August as it would be. And so we want to go ahead and buy the welders for the shop, so that way we get the electrical done right in there. We can go ahead and get the machines in there and get to moving. Later on, we'll bring the purchase a year from now. We'll bring the purchase for the other shop once we get that retrofitted and ready for the welding class. So these are the 10 welders for that shop class.
Any questions? All in favor? All in favor?
I make the motion to approve the changes to the Lindsay Electric contract for the HHS electrical distribution relocation project for a new total amount of $152,150.
I have a motion from Ms. Grassi, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second from Ms. Sullivan.
So the last board meeting, we put out RFP to have our electric distribution relocated. That was awarded to Lindsay Electric. In the meantime, we have been head-to-head with CenterPoint to get this done this summer. Just some challenges that we had to overcome. Underground gave us a location of where our new service pole would be. That's where our RFP was calculated off of. The drawings were done from that. Once we got to the overhead division, we walked out there to find the stakes where they wanted it. They said, oh no, it can't be there, it's got to be in line with the current line. And they gave us a good number of reasons, and so we kind of went back and forth. But so needless to say, we're at about 100 foot of distribution line that's got to be added to that. Had we known we needed that, we would have had that in the original RFP. And so overhead ended up changing that. It's not a bad thing, other than it's an increase 29,000 I think in funding, but it does keep our power line in line with the current lines that run through there. We're not having to create a new easement. There's some positives to it. We just been better if we would have known that ahead of time, and we would have brought that to you as a total project. So this is just to increase that for that specific project.
Are we putting in enough size that we can account for growth if the CT gets bigger? I mean,
Yes, sir.
those welding machines and all take a lot of power.
They've done a lot of calculations, and some of the power will be redistributed from a different transformer to help with that down the road. But for currently where we're at, we still have plenty of capacity. And thankfully, they have rerun that three-phase lines right in front of our ROTC, and then down towards the ballpark, which is where that'll actually be tapping in at for those lines. So, yes, sir, we don't expect to have any capacity issues. And even if we do, we're still going to be pulling from that same three-phase line to whatever we need to for whatever additional buildings. We'll probably do a new service drop.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor? All in favor?
Thank you, guys.
I make a motion to hire executive search services to do the superintendent search in the fall of 2025.
I have a motion from Ms. Grassi, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Ms. Sullivan.
So a subcommittee was formed to interview some of the companies that submitted a bid. There were 8 that submitted a bid. They ranged in price from $10,000 to $31,000. We went with the more conservative side and started with the lower end to see if there was a viable candidate there, and one was selected. It's very important that we don't rush this process. Yes, we could have started sooner, but we will go out for a fall search. Is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think I can fill in a little bit. The subcommittee, we selected the 3 to bring in for interviews. We met and conducted those interviews. We met multiple times in the last month and a half and discussed. I think we 2 stood out from the 3, and then of those 2, the one that we are suggesting, executive search services in the entire board, stood out above and beyond it even more. And if y'all have any questions, we'd be happy to. It was a good process, and one thing we really, we felt like executive search services gave us the most bang for our buck, I think, and, we trusted their process. What we also like is that if for any reason the search doesn't work out, they will conduct the search again for us. Within, if someone comes to our district and they leave for any reason, even if it's personal choice or whatever, then they will conduct the search again at no cost to the district. So, I think what was important to us is that we drive this search and we just have somebody that's helping us along with that, and that's what we feel like we got with I think we got with the executive search services is a good partnership. Don't have anything to add?
And just so you know, the next step would be a planning meeting with them to develop a timeline for the fall and what that looks like.
Now, what is that? I mean, are y'all gonna, as a subcommittee, make that date, or are we?
What date? So we will have a presentation. More than likely, we'll have some subcommittee. We'll have a presentation from the executive search services to the whole board on what that. The first thing we're going to do is get a calendar together. What the calendar looks,
And then you start creating like a profile of what type
Profile,
of person that you're looking for, like,
community
there's multiple
surveys.
steps.
Yeah, so, the first step is approving them, and then they're gonna set that, what that calendar looks like.
With us, with our input.
With our input, and I think we asked a lot of questions. And I think that, whatever questions you guys have, we can answer them, but we overwhelmingly felt like this was the best choice. Any other questions? Go ahead.
And we talked about, we've all talked about the timeline and what that looked like, we just don't have the specifics on when that needs to take place, because we know that we're in a good place.
Yeah, one thing that was explained to us, and I think it's important to explain to all of you guys, is that a fall search in a December, January hire of a superintendent is normal. It's preferred in the superintendent world, because superintendents don't like to come in after everything's been planned for the new year and staff's been hired. That gives them the time to come in, observe a little bit, go through a hiring season, go through planning summer, and then start a new year. So I think everyone we talked to said that that's pretty normal to do a fall search. All right, any other questions? All in favor? All in favor?
Thank you.
Have any other motions? All right, and this board will now adjourn into closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Section 551.071, 072, 074, and 076. Now 10:24, and we are going to return to open from closed. Do I have any motions from closed?
Yes, I make a motion that the board ratifies the resignation of Liliana Gill, Kristen Huber, Linda Tudor, Courtney Yarbrough, and Majel Alexander.
I have a motion from Ms. Grassi. Do I have a second? Second from Ms. Sullivan. All in favor? All in favor. Any other motions?
I make a motion to employ Amy Dewberry, Andrea Mitchell, John Weinbrenner, Christopher Goodwin, Pamela Myers, Cheryl Carroll, Lindsay McCauley, Crystal Gomez, Tanita Watson, and Donald Wells on a one-year probationary contract for the 2025-2026 school year.
I have a motion from Ms. Carrasco. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Second from Ms. Sullivan. All in favor? All in favor? Any other motions? All right, well then at 10:25, I'll adjourn this meeting, the Huffman ISD School Board.